Okay, so now the problem that we face here is how do we record our voice and what kinds of things should we be saying during our podcast? So the first thing that you'll notice is I still have track 1 muted. I'm going to unmute it later when I'm editing later in the process because there's parts of the song that I want to use to illustrate certain points. But the podcast itself is going to be this track, the second track, and it's going to be the third track, which is this mono track. Now, first thing that I'm going to do is I already know I want this to be the opening of my podcast, which is why I sampled it and faded it in the way that I did. Now, the very first thing that I should do is I should probably move this piece of audio to the very beginning of the recording. So I'm going to go ahead and click, and I'm going to slide it so that it matches up with the beginning. Now, if I preview the project by listening to it, it goes a little something like this. Now, at approximately the 6-second mark is where I'm going to want my voice to come in, where I start discussing the song. However, when I record this, I don't want to hear any other noise. So I'm going to mute this track, and then I'm going to place my cursor approximately where I want it to be, which should be stopped, click, place the cursor where I'm going to start. Now, before you start audio recording, you need to make sure that this is picked as mono recording. If you try to pick the stereo one, it's not going to work because our track is going to be a mono track. So I'm going to go ahead and click into this, and when I click into it, that means the track is also active. So the other thing that you should probably check is to make sure that your microphone is working, which my microphone is working quite well. So I'm going to go ahead and say what I was going to say about my musical piece. So I'm going to go ahead and hit record. So the song that I'm going to discuss today is called, shoot, I messed that up. See? And my students are laughing at me. Now, this is why I like podcasting. I'm just going to hit the delete button. So I'm going to go ahead and select the thing that I just made. And I'm going to delete it just by hitting the delete button. So, all right, here we go. The song that I'm going to discuss today is Blue Ridge Mountains by the band Fleet Foxes. This is one of my favorite musical pieces that I've listened to in the last couple of years. I hit stop. Now, what'll happen is I got to see how these two things interact, right? So I'm going to unmute that audio track, and I'm going to go back to the beginning just to listen. Okay, so the problem that I have with this is that this audio track is too far to the left. So I feel like the timing of this would sound more natural if my voice came in while this was fading out more. So I'm going to do the same thing that I taught you guys in a previous video. Is I'm going to click, and I'm just going to drag this guy that direction, and then I want to see how it comes together. The song that I'm going to discuss today is Blue Ridge Mountains by the band Fleet Foxes. This is one of my favorite musical pieces that I've listened to in the last couple of years. Okay, so now I've introduced the song. I actually have this audio piece. I'm going to use the exact same audio piece to transition out of this. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to hit Control-C. And I'm actually going to place it so that it is fading in right as I'm fading out. So I'm going to hit Control-V. And now let's see how it sounds when we start from the beginning. And I'm going to scroll down so that you can see the two active tracks. The song that I'm going to discuss today is Blue Ridge Mountains by the band Fleet Foxes. This is one of my favorite musical pieces that I've listened to in the last couple of years. All right, so it's too quick to get in there. So I'm going to pick this part of the audio, and I'm going to slide it over just a little bit. And now let me see if that I've listened to in the last couple of years. I'm cool with that, the timing of how the last word happens. So that is basically how you're going to piece together your music. This is how you're going to record. Then what you're going to do is you're going to record the next section of your podcast, which is going to be whatever you want to talk about first. You could talk about generally why you liked it or when you started listening to it. Then the next part of your podcast is you're going to start breaking it into its parts and discussing things. But this is the basic foundation through which you're going to use your sampled audio. And then the third track is going to be where you do your discussing. You put your sampled audio there. Third track again back to what you're discussing. And yes, you're going to have to keep sliding things left and right so that the transitions kind of sound natural. So that's kind of the basis for doing podcasts and being able to put a timeline together of the entire podcast.